Welcome back. You're watching Live from Paris. I'm Belle Lupton. It's just gone 9:30 p.m. here in the French capital, and it will give you a reminder of our top stories. London just went red. Labour's Sadiq Khan has beaten Conservative Zac Goldsmith to become London's new mayor. It was a campaign characterised by mudslinging, but it's over now, and the turnout was more than 7% higher than at the last elections. A lucky escape for a Turkish opposition journalist who was shot at 3 times outside a courthouse in Istanbul. Can Dündar escaped unharmed, but he was given a 5-year prison sentence later for revealing state secrets in a report he wrote last year. And evacuations reach hundreds of thousands in Canada as a wildfire continues to blaze out of control 5 days after it broke out. The results are in, and it's a victory for Labour's Sadiq Khan. I'm talking about the battle for London's mayor, of course, which was predicted to go to the son of a bus driver. He was fighting Zac Goldsmith, son of a billionaire, who was standing for the Conservative Party in London. Results standing at 44% for Sadiq Khan and 35% for Zac Goldsmith. But the picture not so pretty for Labour in Scotland, where they lost out to Conservatives. And the turnout was far higher than in 2012's mayoral elections, 7.6% higher in turnout than 2012. 45.6% of people came out to vote. It was a dismal picture for Labour in Scotland, as I just mentioned. It was pushed down to 3rd place there by the Scottish Conservative Party. The winner for the 3rd time in a row was the Scottish National Party. But the SNP did not win enough seats to form an outright majority, and they're now looking to the Green Party for a possible coalition. Micaela Cabrera has more.
A big victory for Nicola Sturgeon's Scottish National Party. The pro-independence SNP emerged with the most number of seats in the Scottish Parliament after Thursday's vote.
What is now beyond doubt is that the SNP has won a 3rd consecutive Scottish Parliament election. That has never been done before in the history of the Scottish Parliament. We have tonight made history.
Despite the historic win, the SNP is 2 seats short of claiming a majority, which they had in the last parliament. The big loser in the polls was the Labour Party, scoring their worst ever result and falling behind the right-wing Conservatives for the first time in 60 years.
This election was always going to be tough for the Scottish Labour Party, just a year after a painful general election defeat. But I am proud that our campaign rose to the challenge of offering an alternative vision for what could be done in our new, more powerful Parliament.
The Tories, led by Ruth Davidson, campaigned aggressively against tax increases and a second independence referendum.
One thing that we're learning as tonight goes on is that there are people right across Scotland who are sending the SNP a message. Their voices and the decision that we made as a country won't be ignored.
Scotland voted not to break away from Britain in 2014. It remains to be seen whether SNP's enduring popularity could usher in a stronger movement for independence.
And some news that's come in during the last half hour to us here at France 24. 3 fatal shootings in the Washington area of the US. The suspect is Eulalio Tordil, an employee of the Federal Protective Service. He has a history of violence. His estranged wife says he subjected their children to military-style discipline, and he once hit her so hard he broke her glasses. That's coming from her, of course. He was taken into custody on Friday afternoon. More on that as we get it. An opposition journalist in Turkey has had a narrow escape. A man fired 3 shots at Can Dündar, shouting that he was a traitor. Police quickly stepped in and disarmed the assailant, and Dündar was left unharmed. The editor of the centre-left Cumhuriyet newspaper was outside the courthouse, where he's just received a verdict in his trial, 5 years in prison. That's over a report he published last year, alleging Turkey's secret services had sent arms to Islamist rebels in Syria.
Yes, he and the Ankara bureau chief, who also got 5 years, they were convicted of revealing state secrets. But there is no question the journalists will appeal. Now, the 2 trucks, what happened was that 2 trucks full of arms, they were carrying artillery shells, mortar bombs, and high-velocity machine gun ammunition, were heading to the Syrian border, and they were stopped by prosecutors and police just short of the border. Now, the 2 trucks were stopped not by journalists, but by prosecutors who had heard that they were carrying arms. And the prosecutors knew that it was legal to export arms to Syria without Parliament's approval. Parliament had not approved of those shipments, and therefore the transport of those arms was illegal. All that Cumhuriyet newspaper did was publish what the prosecutors and police found. So I would think that supporters of the free press and liberal Turks will hope that when this case is taken to a higher court, a superior judge will find that when government goes behind the back of Parliament, it is in the public interest that deceit be exposed, and therefore the publication of what the prosecutors found was legal, because it was the government that was breaking the law in the first place.
Jasper Mortimer speaking there. That's our correspondent in Diyarbakir. Now, in an unexpected change of heart, Pope Francis has accepted the Charlemagne Prize, an annual award named after the ruler of the Frankish Empire, now in modern-day Germany. The Catholic leader used the opportunity to appeal for greater unity within Europe and for a revived European humanism.
I dream of a Europe that promotes and protects the rights of everyone, without neglecting its duties towards all. I dream of a Europe of which it will not be said that its commitment to human rights was its last utopia.
Pope Francis, of course. Now, more than 70 people have been killed south of Aleppo in fighting between Syrian regime forces and al-Qaeda-affiliated fighters. That's according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. The al-Nusra Front and its allies have taken back a series of villages in government hands since December. A 48-hour truce inside the city of Aleppo appears to be holding, though. And all eyes are on North Korea as it holds its first Congress of the ruling Workers' Party for 36 years. The usually secretive country has invited foreign journalists in to cover the ceremonial opening, a grand affair at which leader Kim Jong-un addressed the crowds. The 33-year-old leader is expected to use the Congress to further consolidate his control over the country. His leadership has been characterised by a dual policy, simultaneously pursuing nuclear weapons and economic development. Let's have a listen to him.
In this year of the 7th Party Congress, the military and the people accomplished the great success of the first hydrogen bomb test and the launch of an Earth observation satellite to brilliantly illuminate the prowess of Juche Joseon. With the 70-day campaign of intensified productivity, great achievements in developing socialism have been created and unprecedented results have been accomplished.
That was the North Korean leader speaking there. And on that story earlier, I spoke to Antoine Bondaz, a professor at Sciences Po University here in Paris and a specialist in all things Korea.
There There is actually three main reasons for the 7th Congress. The first one is to normalize North Korea institutional life and come back actually to the political engineering of the 60s and the 70s, when a Congress was held every 5 years in order to present the main political guidance of the next coming 5 years. The second reason is to increase even more Kim Jong-un's authority and leadership, to symbolize the success of the succession that started actually even before Kim Jong-il's death in December 2011, and to celebrate the party's legitimacy. And the third reason could be actually to insist on Kim Jong-un's own political doctrine of Pyongyang, the so-called Pyongyang line, that is actually the simultaneous development of North Korean military and economic capacities.
And just a little bit more on his policy there, the Pyongyang policy. There's a sort of a dichotomy at heart there. How can he be at once pursuing nuclear development and also economic development when often the money will go from economic development to nuclear? It's quite hard to have both going simultaneously.
Exactly, but actually the North Korean economy has been doing not well, but much better than before. For the last 30 years, North Korea has been facing a crisis, an economic crisis. And North Korea today is able to develop its own economy. Of course, it's a very slow economic growth, let's say 1 or 2% every year, but still, in farming, in light industry, Kim Jong-un has been able and has succeeded actually in boosting a bit the North Korean economy. Of course, without sanctions, the economy would be doing much better. But North Korea is dealing with its sanctions and is still doing not well, but much better than before with them.
Antoine Bondas, a North Korea and South Korea expert speaking there. Now, evacuations are continuing in the western Canadian oil town of Fort McMurray against the backdrop of a huge wildfire that's been raging for 5 days now. More than 100,000 people have fled their homes so far, and more than 20,000 were forced to escape north of the city to isolated oil sand camps where they became stranded. Entire neighbourhoods have been destroyed and firefighters haven't managed to get the blaze under control. Luke Shrego has more.
50 cars at a time under escort and headed south as other evacuees from Fort McMurray wait their turn to flee raging wildfires in an operation expected to take 4 days. Those who'd already made it out spoke of their shock.
From what we've seen leaving and what we've seen over the few days as it was burning down was absolutely apocalyptic. It was something that you'd see in a movie, and a disaster movie.
Tens of thousands headed north from the eastern Canadian city this week to the relative safety of work camps when the blaze threatened the only road out of the area and razed parts of Fort McMurray itself. Many people barely had time to pack after mandatory evacuation orders came through, leaving with only the clothes on their backs. Police are now preventing them from going back into the city, with the Canadian government doing all it can to assist local authorities, including getting fuel through for some 1,500 vehicles.
Our government has met all of the Alberta government's requests for assistance, including providing air assets and 7,000 cots for evacuees in emergency shelters, with 13,000 more on the way. We continue to monitor the situation closely, with high temperatures and shifting winds changing rapidly.
That prevented firefighters from bringing the massive blaze under control. It's already swept through around 850 square kilometres in tinder-dry conditions, with no real rain expected for another 2 days.
Luke Shrego reporting there. Now, it's 9:45 here in the French capital. Let's give you a reminder of our headlines here on France 24. London just went red. Labour's Sadiq Khan has beaten Conservative Zach Goldsmith to become London's new mayor. It was a campaign characterised by mudslinging, but it's over now, and the turnout was more than 7% higher than at the last elections. A lucky escape for a Turkish opposition journalist who was shot at 3 times outside a courthouse in Istanbul. Can Dündar escaped unharmed, but later he was given a 5-year prison sentence by the court for revealing state secrets in a report he wrote last year. And evacuations reach hundreds of thousands in Canada as a wildfire continues to blaze out of control 5 days after it broke out. That's it from me, but don't go away because Rochelle is coming up next and she'll be giving you all the latest on Africa's news with Eye on Africa. Do stay with us.